So as you noticed, I have switched sides, so now I can write with my right hand, and the videos will be much better, hopefully. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the week of block periodization, and as its the smallest unit of time that we're going to be working with until we get to the days. This is the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay? And as you see here with my strange letters that will actually mean something in a bit, this is how I program out my week. And this is how you can program out your week. So the week is very handy because it's 7 days. It's our basic unit of measurement for measuring out days is a week, and then a month, and then a year, right? And the week, 7 is kind of an awkward number, especially for certain splits, certain times a week that you want to lift. I'm lifting 4 times a week right now. That I would say that's about ideal for most people. Hate to bring steroids into this, but man, you gotta. If you are using, you can do more times a week. You can do quite a few more days, every day, depending on the intensity, because it allows you to recover more. However, if you're natural, or if you have a job outside of lifting that's strenuous, physically strenuous, or of course if you have other time constrictions, maybe school, maybe you just don't have that much free time and you don't want to dedicate that much time to lifting, then you can't really lift more than 4 days a week. So 4 days I think is just really good. It's a really good place for everyone to start, intermediate wise. If you're a beginner, you can probably get away with 3, maybe even 2. So 4 times a week we're looking at here, okay? If you're powerlifting and strength training to some extent, you want to focus everything around the squat, bench, deadlift. Because the squat, bench, and deadlift, of course, is the core of powerlifting. It's the core of the goals. So might as well focus our lifting around those goals. And as you get into less specific types of programs, so maybe stuff that you're doing some bodybuilding, you don't really want to focus it around squat, bench, and deadlift. This gets a bit more controversial. If you're a power lifter, I would still advise you to do that, even if you're in like a purely hypertrophy block, and that's extending for a long time. Because I know guys, and I've done this, and I'm probably going to do this, where I'm going to be just focusing on building muscle for more than 3 months. And that's a long time. But I'm not going to change up the focus of my workout, because as I get further away from the squat, bench, and deadlift, all the muscle that I'm going to gain, it's less specific to the actual sport. So just keep that in mind as you program it out. So squat, bench, deadlift. As you see, I have a bench on here twice. Bench is a lot less strenuous on the body, and you can recover from it a lot sooner. So that's why I have it on here twice. It's also something that I really need to work on myself, skill-wise. Of course, all the lifts I need to, but bench is very important to have the necessary skill down. So getting away, you can get away with 2 times, 3 times a week benching. I've done 3 times a week. It's tough, and you don't want to bench all out high intensity 3 times a week. So I actually changed up the focus of my bench workouts, and I'll go into that later. So squat, bench, deadlift. Okay. Underneath, keep bumping this thing, underneath are a bunch of weird letters. And these letters actually mean something. They're not just strange code words I have. So we'll go into the first ones here. With each day, you're probably going to need to do more than just squat, just deadlift, and just bench. Right? Some assistance work is necessary. And especially if you're building muscle hypertrophy, this is absolutely necessary. You need to have a lot of assistance work. I would say it should take up at least half of your time in the gym if you're doing hypertrophy work. If you're doing strength, then you can cut down a little bit on assistance stuff. Especially peaking, you can cut a lot down on assistance stuff. But the nature of our program, we're going to be talking about strength style blocks. I think it's a good intermediate between hypertrophy and between peaking. So right here, you have glutes and quads. Glutes and quads are going to be the main assistance focus of the day. I have glute thrusts on here, which they're arguably transfer over to your lift. Some people say they can't, some say they can. I've seen good results with it, and I think it works for me. I'm going to do some actual tests with it to make sure later on that it actually does work, and it's not just, you should control for variables when trying to figure out if certain lifts, if certain styles of programming work for you. You shouldn't just say, oh yeah, they work, and not actually really know. Running experiments on yourself is a great way to actually figure that out. So I have glute thrusts, and then I've got some split squats here. So there's a lot of glutes in there. Split squats is pretty heavy glutes. And that's because when I squat normally, I don't include a lot of glutes in my actual, in the firing of the movement, and that's something I want to do more. So I think working a lot on glutes is going to help me with that, and it also transfer over to my deadlift quite a bit. So glutes are something I want to focus on. My squat itself actually is very quad dominant, and I get a lot of work into my quads just squatting. Same with my deadlift. Since I pull sumo, it's a lot of quads. So I really don't need to worry too much about my quads not getting the required work in, because they really are throughout the week. So that's why I have glutes and quads in on squat day. I think putting in the accessories that are around your main movement is a good idea. Like I wouldn't say putting in hamstrings and core as the main assistance movements for the squat would be a good idea. Because it's a completely different muscle group, and it will fatigue you for your deadlift later on down the week. Hamstrings, that is. I like to keep it all centered around the squat. Okay, so over a few days we're going to go on the bench. And I just want to let you know, the reason I'm showing you my program is because building any one program for everyone, it's not going to work. That's why all those general type programs, they're not the best for people, because they don't account for individual needs. The best kinds of programs are ones that are designed specifically for you, and usually it's by you, unless you have a really good coach. So I'm showing you my program as a good example of how I built it for me. And maybe you can take some ideas from it, maybe take some examples and build your own. So that's why I'm doing that. So I bench a few days later. The reason I don't bench right after squat is as you get heavier in your squat, it's going to take a large toll on your wrist and your shoulders. Your shoulders are so cranked back, and your wrists, usually you're back here if you're really trying to get under it. And it's a lot of weight resting down on your wrist as well. And if you think about it, when you're benching, that's the same exact thing. So you want to try to vary it up so you don't have too much stress on your wrist and your shoulders. And also, there's a lot in your upper back as well, and you're really trying to retract that when you bench. So just some things to keep in mind. I like to have a space in between. I think it's a great way to give my body some time to recover. So on bench day, main focus of the day is the pecs. Okay, I like to do this with my bench. I bench twice a week, but I have main focuses for my assistance movements for my bench. So as you can see later on down the week, all the way down here, I have triceps. And that's so I don't get overwork on my pecs or my triceps throughout the week. So on this bench day, pecs is the main movement. That's a lot through heavy dips. That's the main thing I like to do. Dips, I think, have a really good transfer over to my bench. And also my secondary, which is a little bit less heavy, less intense, triceps and delt work. That's all just superset in a kind of giant set together. Just get some extra work in. And that takes the form of maybe some things like push downs. I really like rolling tricep extensions. Look those up. I think they're great, especially when you get strong with them. There's a lot of transfer over to your bench. Makes you really explosive. I do some delt work, lateral raises, front raises, things like that. Maybe seated overhead press with some dumbbells. Light, not serious stuff, nothing to stress me out. My shoulders, they don't help me out with my bench a ton. Like I tried overhead pressing really heavy, and that actually didn't help my bench out that much. So I found that not focusing on my shoulders is actually really good, because it allows me to focus on my triceps, my chest more, my pecs, and that has a larger transfer in my bench. And of course, throughout, we're doing lats and biceps. I'm doing pull-ups after some bench sets. I am doing rows after my dips. I'm doing curls after my triceps. You want to make sure you have a complete balance with your workouts. You don't want to completely neglect your back and your biceps because it can create imbalances and injuries if you ignore it too much. In addition to this, also all my warm-ups are mainly back work. I got this idea, oh am I forgetting his name? Famous powerlifter, Matt Wenning. I got it from Matt Wenning. He's a big conjugate guy, but he is a huge fan of doing back and biceps and traps and all these things just to warm up. He only really does tricep extensions, but he does a ton of sets of back work. So he gets in like 2 times back work than like front work throughout the week, volume wise. So it's a great way that he stayed injury free, and I've been starting to do that, and I notice my bench is a little bit more explosive because I'm not pre-exhausting those muscles with a bunch of push downs and things like that. So I think that's a great way to warm up, and it's a great way to get some back work in to stay upright, posture good, and all these different things. So let's get on to deadlifts. Fun stuff. So deadlifts are interesting, especially when I pull sumo, because it's a lot of the same muscle groups as my squat. So my assistant stuff, the main is my spinal erectors. That's your lower back. I feel like even in sumo where it's more quad dominant and like leg dominant, this is lower back dominant, my lower back is still very strong and it's a big part of my pulling. And it's what gets me really explosive, and I like to train it because I feel like it has a good carryover. But after that, we also have hams, glutes, quads, and glutes. Got to get the order right. So that takes the form of some more, not split squats, Bulgarian split squats, where your legs up on the bench and you do squats that way, and dumbbell RDLs. So that just gets in some extra hamstring work for my deadlift. The sumo pull doesn't really include as much hamstrings as much as the conventional, so it's not as huge of a focus. Of course, you still should work it, and I do get a lot of work through my deadlift, and the extra hamstring work there I think is enough to get the required strength in. If I notice my deadlift isn't improving, I'll throw in some more hamstring work. It's something I'm kind of playing around with right now, so we'll see. Oh, and lower back, spinal erectors, that's 45-degree back extensions. So getting some hamstring work in through there as well. I kind of forgot about that. I'll just underline it to show that it's extra important. And then finally, we have another bench workout. So that's going to be triceps as the main assistance movement, and that's going to take the form of heavy tricep movements or heavy push downs. So a lot of heavy tricep stuff. And then we're doing some more pecs and delts in the form of flies or light dips with some more basic delt work, front raises, lateral raises, and then curls again. So that's how I'm able to get in my work throughout the week. If your work schedule, school schedule, everything is different, you can build it in a different way. But this is why I do what I do. Also, I want to let you know, I have a bunch of space before my deadlift, because the deadlift for me is really strenuous. It's a lot heavier than my other movements, because I have a stronger deadlift. So I need as much time as I can before I squat, or after I squat the deadlift. And then for my bench, deadlift doesn't affect my bench nearly at all, so it's not that big of a deal for me. Before I go, I do want to go over something I neglected in the beginning, and this is really important. Why I've ordered it in such a way. Why don't I do deadlift first or bench first or whatever? In terms of benching, squatting, benching, deadlift, really doesn't really matter, honestly. If you wanted to put bench here, put squat here, put bench here, put deadlift here, would be the exact same thing. Wouldn't be that big of a deal. I just prefer it this way because I like to get my squat out of the way early in the week. That's really the only reason why. And because all the bench bros are benching on Monday. So that's why I have it set up that way. Obviously, I want to space everything out with the benches. Bench between deadlift, bench between squat. just so I can give my legs some time to rest. And I think that's it. Make sure you have enough recovery time. Make sure you have enough volume in. And really, it's not too complex once you get to understanding it. Once you get to be able to put each piece in place, it's like a puzzle. It looks really complex from the outside, but once you get into it, you put some pieces in place, it all falls in line. It actually isn't so complex. So, in the next video, I think we're going to talk about how we actually put these weeks into place to make a block. And that will be really fun because it'll be something more advanced. Probably something you guys haven't heard of a whole lot.